The space station called Harmonious Discourse floated in the darkness between stars. It was old, very old. The Galactic Concord had built it 3 million years ago as a place where different species could meet and talk. 2,000 different alien races used this station. They came from every corner of the galaxy. They had rules. They had systems. They believed they understood everything about life in the universe. They were wrong. High Analyst Eth stood at the observation window and watched the strange ship approach. He was Ani, an insect-like creature with 4 arms and large compound eyes that could see in many directions at once. His job was simple but important. He studied new species. He classified them. He decided where they belonged in the great order of things. The Concord had categories for every type of creature. Grazers were peaceful plant-eaters. Scavengers fed on the dead. Ambush predators hid and attacked with sudden violence. Pack hunters worked together to bring down prey. And then there were apex predators, the most dangerous of all. Only 7 species in all of history had earned that terrible title. All 7 were now dead or locked away on prison worlds. The galaxy was safer without them. The approaching ship was small and crude. Its metal hull showed signs of rough welding. Its engines burned with an inefficient orange glow. Eth felt a small wave of pity. Whatever species built this vessel, they were clearly primitive. They would need help. They would need guidance. The ship was called the Perseverance. The species inside called themselves humans. Eth met them in the greeting chamber. There were 5 of them, wearing simple cloth uniforms. They walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms. Their skin came in different shades of brown and pink. They had hair on their heads and small eyes that faced forward. Forward-facing eyes usually meant a predator of some kind, but these creatures were so small and soft that Eth dismissed the concern. The leader of the humans was a female called Sarah. She smiled when she saw Eth. This facial expression, he later learned, was meant to show friendship, but it also showed teeth, many teeth. "Thank you for receiving us," Sarah said through the translation device. "We come in peace. We hope to learn from the Galactic Concord and share what we know in return." Eth made the gesture of welcome. "You are most fortunate. The Concord welcomes all developing species. We will help you find your proper place among the stars." He meant this kindly. He did not notice the brief flash of something hard in Sarah's eyes. The evaluation process took several days. Eth and his team performed many tests. They examined human bodies and found them strange. The humans had no claws, no armor, no venom. Their senses were poor compared to most species. They could not see in the dark. They could not hear high sounds. They could not smell danger from far away. And yet they had reached the stars. This was curious. The psychological tests were even more confusing. The humans showed traits that should not exist together. They formed strong emotional bonds like prey animals seeking safety in herds. But they also showed aggression and territorial behavior like predators. They were competitive, but they also cooperated in complex ways. They felt fear, but they did not run. They felt anger, but they did not always attack. "What are they?" asked Eth's assistant, a young Ani named. Eth studied the data for a long time. "Pack hunters," he finally said. "They must be pack hunters. They work together to overcome their physical weaknesses. We have seen this pattern before. They are clever but not exceptional. They will make good laborers once they are properly integrated." The Concord leadership accepted this classification. The humans were welcomed into the galactic community with great celebration. Other species spoke to them slowly, using simple words. Trade agreements were offered, but these agreements were not fair. The humans received little and gave much. The Concord called this helping the newcomers adjust. Sarah sat in her quarters aboard the Perseverance and read the trade agreements. Her face showed nothing, but she made notes. She paid attention to every word and every number. She noticed which species truly meant to help and which ones saw humans as tools to be used. At a welcoming feast, a massive creature called approached her. They were large and strong and very proud. This one looked down at Sarah like she was a small insect. "Your people are lucky," they said. "Most primitive species destroy themselves before they reach the stars. The conquered will protect you. Just do as you are told and you will survive." Sarah smiled. She showed many teeth. "Thank you for your concern. We are very good at surviving." The walked away, satisfied that it had shown proper dominance. It did not understand that it had just been studied, measured, evaluated. The humans spent weeks on the station. They watched everything. They learned every custom. They made friends where they could and noted enemies where they could not. They accepted the unfair trade deals without complaint. They worked hard at the jobs they were given. They seemed grateful for everything. On the last night before the Perseverance returned to human space, Eth found Sarah standing alone at an observation window. She was watching the stars with an expression he could not read. "You seem thoughtful," he said. "Just looking at the view," she replied. "It is very beautiful, so many stars, so many worlds, so many possibilities." Eth felt a strange unease. The way she said possibilities did not sound like a primitive creature grateful for protection. It sounded like something else, something hungry, but not hungry in the way of predators who kill and eat. Hungry in a different way, patient, calculating. "You will return to your home world now?" he asked. "Yes, we have much to tell our people, much to teach them." She paused. "Thank you, Eth, you have been kind to us. I will remember that." After the humans left, Eth filed his report. He marked them as pack hunters, harmless, useful as laborers. But at the bottom of his report, he added a note that would haunt him for years. Recommend further observation. Species displays anomalous trait combinations that resist standard classification. Unable to explain how such physically weak creatures survive their home world, which records indicate is unusually hostile. Further study required. No one read the note. The humans were classified. The matter was closed. In the darkness of space, the Perseverance flew home. Inside, Sarah gathered her crew. "They think we are harmless," she said. "Good, let them think that. We have work to do." The stars gleamed cold and bright around them. The humans looked at those stars not with fear or wonder, but with the calm patience of hunters who knew that the chase had only just begun. 5 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Concord. In that time, the humans had been given 12 worlds to call their own. The Conquered considered this very generous. No one mentioned that all 12 worlds were places no other species wanted. One world was covered in toxic swamps. Another had radiation levels that would kill most creatures in days. A third was so cold that oxygen froze into snow. The Conquered expected the humans to struggle. They expected to receive calls for help, for supplies, for rescue. The calls never came. Instead, the humans built cities in the toxic swamps. They harvested energy from the radiation. They melted the frozen oxygen and breathed it. They took the worst worlds in the sector and made them into homes. Other species watched with confusion. This was not normal behavior. This was not how weak species acted. Commander stood on the bridge of the human warship Endurance and studied the tactical display. He was a tall man with dark skin and gray hair at his temples. His eyes were calm, but they never stopped moving, always watching, always thinking. "Tell me about the situation," he said. His second officer, a woman named, pulled up the data. "They have taken hostages, 12 Conquered diplomats, including Ambassador L from the Ani delegation. They are holding them in a compound on the moon of 4. Nodded slowly. They were one of the classified apex predators. They were massive reptiles, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in armored scales. They had evolved on a world of constant violence. They killed for food, for territory, for entertainment. The Conquered had been trying to contain them for centuries. "What does the Conquered want us to do?" asked. "Standard protocol. Surround the compound. Open negotiations. Offer territorial concessions. Wait for them to lose interest." Looked at the display. How long does that usually take? The last hostage situation with the lasted 8 months. 14 hostages died during negotiations. That is not acceptable, said quietly. Tell the conquered we will handle this our way. The conquered commanders were worried. They sent messages warning the humans not to provoke the. They explained that apex predators were dangerous beyond human understanding. They said the humans should stay back and let experienced species manage the crisis. Turned off the communications channel. The Endurance moved into position above 4, gathered his strike team, 24 soldiers, all volunteers. They knew they were bigger, stronger, and faster than any human. They did not care. Listen carefully, told them. We cannot fight them head-on. We would lose, but we do not need to fight them head-on. We need to fight them our way. The team landed at night. The moon of 4 was cold and dark. The being cold-blooded reptiles were slow and sluggish in low temperatures. They had built fires around their compound to stay warm. The fires made shadows. The shadows gave the humans places to hide. For the first 12 hours the humans did nothing. They watched, they counted guards, they mapped patrol routes, they noted every entrance and exit. They knew the humans were out there. They could smell them, but they could not find them. Every time a patrol went out to hunt the humans simply moved away. They did not run. They did not hide in fear. They just moved, calm and quiet, always staying beyond reach. On the second night, the sounds began. Strange noises echoed across the cold landscape. Music, drums, voices speaking in languages they could not understand. Lights flickered in the distance, appearing and disappearing. They sent warriors to investigate. The warriors found nothing. When they returned to the compound, they found that supplies had been moved. Water containers were empty. Weapons had been relocated. Nothing was missing. Nothing was damaged, but everything was wrong. They did not sleep that night. Every sound made them jump. Every shadow seemed to hide danger. Their great strength meant nothing against an enemy they could not catch. On the third day, the humans attacked, but it was not the wild charge they expected. The humans came from 6 directions at once. They used smoke and noise to create confusion. They targeted the generators first, plunging the compound into darkness. They had excellent night vision, but so did human technology. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, 11 were dead. 23 were captured. All 12 hostages were recovered alive. Not a single human was killed. A conquered observer ship had recorded everything. The footage spread across the galaxy within hours. Species that had dismissed humans as harmless laborers watched in shock. They were apex predators. They had never been defeated so completely, so efficiently, so quickly. High Analyst Eth received a summons from the conquered Security Council. He had not thought about the humans in years. They were pack hunters. They were laborers. They were nothing special. But as he watched the footage from 4, his compound eyes saw something that chilled his blood. The survivors were being interviewed. These were creatures that feared nothing. They had fought in wars across 100 worlds. They had killed thousands of enemies. They were terrified. They would not stop, one said. His voice trembled. We would chase them and they would run, but they would not run away. They would run to new positions, then they would chase us. We would try to rest, but they never rested. They took turns. Some would sleep while others watched. It was not natural. Predators attack and then rest. Prey runs and then hides. These humans did neither. They just kept coming, always watching, always waiting. Eth paused the recording. He remembered his old report. He remembered the note at the bottom. He had asked for further study. No one had listened. Bring me everything we have on the human species, he told his assistant. Every record, every observation, everything. The assistant hesitated. Sir, is this really necessary? They are just pack hunters. Eth looked at the frozen image on the screen. 24 small, soft creatures had defeated an apex predator species in their own territory, in conditions that should have favored the completely. "No," he said slowly. "They are not. I do not know what they are, but I intend to find out." Far away, on the bridge of the Endurance, received messages of congratulation from human colonies across the sector. He read them without expression. Sir asked, "Is something wrong?" "They are watching us now," said. "Before we were invisible. Now they see us. We must be careful." "Careful of what?" "Looked at the stars on the... When you are hunting something, you do not want it to know you are there. The hunt becomes harder when the prey is aware." He paused. "But we are not the prey in this story. We never were, and now they are starting to understand that." 15 years after first contact, High Analyst Eth had become the galaxy's leading expert on humanity. This was not an honor he had asked for. It was a burden that kept him awake at night. His office was filled with data, reports, images, recordings. He had spent 10 years collecting information about the human species, and every piece of evidence made him more afraid. The problem was not that humans were dangerous. Many species were dangerous. The problem was that humans were dangerous in ways that should not be possible. Eth opened a file containing records from Earth, the human home world. These records had been difficult to obtain. The humans shared them freely, almost eagerly, as if they did not understand what they revealed. He read about persistence hunting. Long ago, before humans had technology, they hunted animals for food. They were not fast, they were not strong, they had no claws or fangs, but they had something no other predator on their world possessed. They could run for hours without stopping, days even. When humans hunted, they did not catch their prey quickly. Instead, they followed it. They tracked it across plains and through forests. The prey would run and the humans would walk behind it. The prey would rest, but the humans would keep coming. Eventually, after hours or days, the prey would collapse from exhaustion. Then the humans would kill it. This was terrifying to Eth. Every other predator in the galaxy attacked with speed and power. Humans attacked with patience and time. They did not need to be faster than their prey. They only needed to never stop. But that was not the worst part. Eth opened another file. This one contained records of human domestication practices. On every world in the galaxy, the relationship between predator and prey was simple. Predators killed prey. Prey feared predators. This was the natural order. Humans had broken this order completely. They had taken wolves, apex predators of their world, and made them into pets, not slaves, not prisoners, companions. The wolves lived in human homes. They slept in human beds. They loved humans and humans loved them back. They had done this with other predators too. Cats, falcons, even some reptiles, creatures that should have been enemies had become friends. But it went beyond predators. Humans also formed bonds with prey animals. They kept cows and chickens and pigs. They gave these animals names. They spoke to them with affection. And then, sometimes, they killed them for food. Any other species would find this impossible. How could you love something and also eat it? How could you befriend a predator and also hunt prey? Humans did not see the contradiction. To them, it was simply normal. Eth closed the file and rubbed his tired eyes. A message arrived from his assistant. "Sir, the Trade Council has released new data on human commerce." Eth opened the data and felt his heart sink. In 15 years, human trade had grown by 12,000%. Human goods were everywhere. Human music played in alien markets. Human food was served in expensive restaurants. Human art hung in galleries across the conquered. More importantly, humans themselves were everywhere. They worked as translators because they learned languages faster than any other species. They worked as negotiators because they could read emotional cues that others missed. They worked as engineers because they could fix problems in strange and creative ways. And they worked as mercenaries. Human military contractors were the most requested in the galaxy. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest. They were neither, but they completed missions that other species said were impossible. They found solutions that no one else could imagine. They never gave up. A knock came at Eth's door. He opened it to find a conquered security officer. "High Analyst, the Security Council requests your presence. There has been an incident." Eth followed the officer through the station. He already knew what this was about. There had been many incidents lately: trade restrictions against human merchants, diplomatic insults against human ambassadors. Human ships stopped and searched for no reason. Someone was moving against the humans, someone powerful. In the Security Council chamber, Eth found chaos. Representatives from dozens of species were arguing. At the center of the room, a holographic display showed a human colony world. The world was burning. "What happened?" Eth asked. "Unknown attackers," a council member explained. "They destroyed 3 human settlements, thousands dead." "Who is responsible?" "The attackers left no evidence, but we have our suspicions." Eth looked around the chamber. He saw fear in many eyes. He also saw satisfaction in some. The powerful species who had treated humans like useful tools were worried. Humans were becoming too successful, too influential, too dangerous. Someone had decided to send a message. Eth was called to present his research. He stood before the council and showed them everything he had learned: the persistence hunting, the domestication, the impossible ability to form bonds with any creature. "You must understand," he said, "humans do not think like other species. When they are hurt, they do not simply react with anger or fear. They plan, they adapt, they find weaknesses, and they never ever forget." A council member laughed. "They are still physically weak. Their technology is still inferior. What can they really do?" Eth looked at the laughing council member with pity. "Let me tell you a story from Earth," he said. "Once there was a bird called the passenger pigeon. Billions of these birds lived in North America. They filled the skies in flocks so large they blocked the sun. Humans hunted them for food. Within 100 years, every single passenger pigeon was dead. Not thousands, not millions, all of them. Extinction." The chamber was silent. "Humans drove hundreds of species to extinction on their world," Eth continued. "Not because they were hungry, not because they were threatened. Sometimes just because those species were inconvenient. The humans did not stop until every last one was gone." He paused to let this sink in. "And that was before they had starships, before they had nuclear weapons, before they had artificial intelligence. That was when they were primitives with sticks and fire." The laughing council member was not laughing anymore. "My analysis is complete," Eth said. "The human species cannot be classified as pack hunters. They display traits of every predator category simultaneously. They have the patience of ambush predators, the cooperation of pack hunters, the adaptability of scavengers, and the relentlessness of apex predators. But they have something else, something we have never seen before." "What is that?" the council leader asked. Eth looked at the burning colony on the display. Thousands of humans were dead. Whoever had attacked them probably expected the humans to be afraid, to back down, to accept their place. They had made a terrible mistake. "Humans form emotional bonds," Eth said. "With each other, with other species, even with enemies. They call this love or friendship or loyalty. We thought this was a weakness. We were wrong. It is their greatest strength. When you hurt a human, you do not hurt one individual. You hurt everyone who loves that individual. You make enemies of every human who has ever formed a bond with the victim." He pointed at the burning world. "Whoever did this has just made enemies of an entire species. A species that never forgets. A species that never stops. A species that has driven its enemies to extinction before and will do so again if provoked." The chamber was very quiet. "My recommendation," Eth concluded, is that we find the attackers and surrender them to human justice before the humans find them first. Because if the humans reach them before we do, there will be nothing left to surrender. Far away in human space, messages flew between colonies. Grieving families comforted each other. Memorial services were planned. Tears were shed. But in quiet rooms away from the cameras, human leaders were meeting. They spoke in low voices. They shared information. They made plans. They did not speak of revenge. That word was too simple, too emotional. They spoke of justice. They spoke of consequences. They spoke of patience. The hunt had begun. The attack on New Eden killed 32,000 humans in a single day. The capital city was reduced to ash and rubble. Schools were destroyed. Hospitals were vaporized. Families were erased from existence. The attackers called themselves separatists. They claimed to be rogue elements acting without conquered approval. They released statements calling humans a threat to galactic stability. They said the attack was necessary for peace. No one believed them. Admiral stood on the bridge of the human flagship Unconquerable and watched the damage reports scroll across her screen. She was the daughter of Sarah, the diplomat who had first contacted the Galactic Concord 22 years ago, had been born in space. She had grown up among the stars. She had dedicated her life to building bridges between humans and other species. Now 32,000 of her people were dead. Her officers watched her carefully. They expected orders. They expected anger. They expected the command to attack, to burn, to destroy. Human ships were already gathering. The fleet was ready. Every human in the galaxy wanted blood. Said nothing. For 3 days she said nothing. She read reports. She studied data. She made calls to human colonies across the sector. She spoke with allies, both human and alien. She listened more than she talked. On the 4th day, she called a meeting of her senior staff. "We know who did this," she said. "A faction within the conquered leadership, 12 individuals from 4 species. They have been working against us for years. They see us as a threat to their power." Her weapons officer leaned forward. "Then we attack. We have the ships. We have the soldiers. We can reach them within hours." "And then what?" asked. "And then they die, and anyone who helped them dies." Nodded slowly. "That is what they expect. That is what they want." She activated a holographic display. It showed the disposition of conquered forces throughout the sector. "Look carefully," she said. 300 warships are positioned along our borders. They are not labeled as hostile. They are officially there for peacekeeping purposes. But their weapons are armed. Their shields are raised. They are waiting for us to attack first. Understanding dawned in the eyes of her officers. "It is a trap," continued. "We attack the conspirators and suddenly we are the aggressors. The conquered will have justification to move against us. They will destroy our colonies. They will enslave our people. They will call it justice." "So we do nothing," her weapons officer demanded. "We let them murder our children and do nothing." "I did not say we do nothing." His voice was cold. "I said we do not attack. There is a difference." Over the next week, humans across the galaxy began to move. But they did not move toward conquered space. They moved away from it. Human merchants closed their shops in alien markets. Human translators resigned from their positions. Human doctors left their clinics. Human engineers abandoned their projects. Quietly, without drama, humans began returning home. At first, the conquered barely noticed. Humans were a small part of the galactic economy. Their departure was inconvenient but not critical. Then the problems began. A translation error caused a trade dispute between 2 major species. Without human mediators, the dispute escalated into a minor war. 3 colony worlds burned before peace was restored. A power station failed in a conquered core system. The alien engineers could not fix it. They had relied on human contractors for years. They had forgotten how to solve problems themselves. The The station went dark for 6 days. A diplomatic summit collapsed when the attending species could not understand each other. Human translators had been the invisible glue holding conversations together. Without them, ancient enemies remembered why they hated each other. The conquered had not realized how deeply humans had woven themselves into galactic society. They had seen humans as laborers, as tools, as useful primitives. They had not noticed that humans had become essential. Then the evidence was released. It appeared simultaneously on every communication network in the galaxy. Financial records showing payments from conquered officials to the attackers. Communication logs planning the assault on New Eden. Testimony from who had witnessed the conspiracy being formed. The evidence was undeniable. It was comprehensive. It was devastating. The conquered fractured. Species that had grown to depend on human trade demanded justice. Species that had formed friendships with humans demanded punishment for the killers. Species that had watched humans work alongside them for 2 decades could not believe their governments had sanctioned such an attack. The 12 conspirators found themselves isolated. Their allies abandoned them, their supporters ever knowing them. They retreated to their home worlds and surrounded themselves with guards. It was not enough. Human agents had spent years building relationships across the galaxy. They had made friends in every species. Some of those friends worked in government. Some worked in security. Some worked in places where secrets were kept. The conspirators woke one night to find their personal files displayed on screens across their own homes. Their private conversations played on public broadcasts. Their hidden bank accounts were revealed to their citizens. They had nowhere to hide. Every secret they possessed was now known. Every ally they had was now afraid to help them. And still, the humans did not attack. Admiral appeared on galactic broadcasts. Her face was calm. Her voice was steady. She showed no anger, no hatred, no desire for revenge. The Galactic Conquered has 3 cycles to surrender those responsible for the attack on New Eden, she said. We do not ask for war. We do not seek destruction. We ask only for justice. She paused. We are a patient species. Our ancestors chased prey across continents. They followed their targets for days, for weeks, for as long as it took. We have not forgotten how to wait, but our patience has limits. A conquered representative challenged her. And if we do not surrender them, what then? You will attack us. Smiled, it was not a warm smile. We will not attack you. We will simply continue to withdraw. Every human in conquered space will come home. Every human service will end. Every human partnership will dissolve. And you will remember what it was like before we came, when you could not understand each other, when you could not solve your own problems, when you were alone. The representative sputtered, that is blackmail. No, said, blackmail is threatening harm. We are threatening only to leave you alone. If our presence has no value, then our absence should cause no concern. She leaned forward. 3 cycles, choose wisely. The conquered leadership met in emergency session. They debated for hours. Some wanted to call the human bluff. Some wanted to surrender the conspirators immediately. Some wanted to attack while they still could. In the end, they chose survival. On the 3rd day, the 12 conspirators were delivered to a neutral station. They were tried before a conquered tribunal, not a human court. The humans had insisted on this. They wanted justice, not revenge. They wanted the galaxy to see that rules and laws mattered. The conspirators were found guilty. They were sentenced to imprisonment on a dead world, alone with their crimes. And humanity, which had shown the galaxy what it meant to be hunted, quietly returned to work. The shops reopened. The translators went back to their posts. The engineers picked up their tools. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. Admiral stood at the window of her flagship and watched the stars. What are you thinking? Her first officer asked. I am thinking about my mother, said. 22 years ago, she stood on a conquered station and let them think we were harmless. She played their game. She accepted their rules. She waited. And now they know we are not harmless, but they also know we are not monsters. We could have burned their worlds. We could have slaughtered their people. We chose not to. We chose justice over revenge. She turned from the window. That is how you change a galaxy. Not through war, but through example. Not through fear, but through trust. My mother understood that. I am only following her path. Far away, on a dozen different worlds, aliens looked at their human neighbors with new eyes. These small, soft creatures had faced an enemy that tried to destroy them. They had responded not with blind rage, but with cold precision. They had won not through violence, but through patience. The hunt was over, but the lesson would never be forgotten. The 3 cycles expired on a quiet morning. The conspirators had been surrendered, tried, and imprisoned. The immediate crisis was over, but the galaxy had been changed forever. High Analyst Eth stood before the grand assembly of the Galactic Conquered. He was very old now. His chitin had faded to a pale gray. His compound eyes did not see as clearly as they once had, but his mind was still sharp and his voice was still strong. Around him sat representatives from 2,000 species. They had gathered to hear his final analysis. They had gathered to learn the truth about humanity. I have studied humans for 30 years, Eth began. I have read their history. I have observed their behavior. I have tried to understand how a species so physically weak could become so influential. He paused to look around the chamber. When I first met humans, I classified them as pack hunters. This was wrong. When they defeated I reclassified them as an unknown type of apex predator. This was also wrong. A murmur ran through the assembly. Humans are not predators in any way we understand. They are something new, something we have never encountered in 3 million years of galactic history. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing humans across the galaxy, humans working with aliens, humans sharing meals with species that should have been enemies, humans teaching alien children, humans learning from alien elders. Look at these images, Eth said. What do you see? A representative spoke. I see humans infiltrating our society. No, Eth said. You see humans joining our society. There is a difference. Infiltrators hide who they are. Humans do not hide. They share their music, their food, their stories. They learn our languages and teach us theirs. They make friends. He emphasized the last word. This is what makes them dangerous. Not their endurance, though that is remarkable. Not their adaptability, though that is unmatched. Not their creativity, though that has surprised us many times. What makes humans truly dangerous is their ability to form bonds. The chamber was silent. Consider Eth continued. For centuries they were our enemies. They raided our colonies. They killed our people. We could not defeat them, only contain them. He changed the display. It now showed an human standing together. After the hostage rescue 20 years ago, they requested a meeting with human leaders. We were shocked. They do not negotiate. They do not make alliances. They are apex predators who respect only strength. He let this sink in. But they had seen something in the humans, not just strength, something else. The leader said, and I quote, "These humans hunt like we do. They do not stop. They do not surrender, but they also do not hate. After they defeated us, they treated our wounded. They offered our survivors food and water. We have never seen a predator show mercy." The display changed again. It showed the fighting alongside humans during the New Eden crisis. They are now humanity's closest military allies. This should be impossible. Apex predators do not form alliances, but humans made it possible because they did something unprecedented. They defeated an enemy and then befriended them. Eth moved to the center of the chamber. This is the pattern I have observed again and again. Humans do not simply conquer or defeat. They connect. They build relationships. They create networks of friendship and loyalty that span species and cultures. A Ani representative raised a hand. You speak of friendship as if it were a weapon. That seems exaggerated. Eth shook his head. It is not a weapon. It is something more powerful. Weapons can be defended against. Friendship cannot. When a human makes a true friend of another species, that friend becomes part of a network. That network shares information, resources, and support. Over time, the network grows. It becomes impossible to separate humans from the species they have befriended. He displayed a map of the galaxy. Human connections were marked in blue. The blue lines spread across the map like veins, connecting hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. Look at this map. Look at how far human influence has spread in just 30 years. Not through conquest, not through trade alone, through friendship, through genuine connection. The assembly stared at the map in silence. This is why we cannot contain humans the way we contained the, Eth said. They were pure predators, they only destroyed. Humans do something far more subtle. They make themselves needed. They make themselves loved. And once that happens, removing them would tear apart the fabric of galactic society. He turned to face the assembly directly. Let me be clear about what I am saying. Humans are not going to conquer the galaxy. They do not need to. In another 100 years, perhaps 200, every species in this assembly will count humans among their closest friends. Human ideas will shape our cultures. Human values will influence our laws. Human art will fill our galleries. And we will not resist any of this because we will not want to resist. We will embrace it because humans will have made us genuinely care about them. He paused for the final time. The true apex predator is not the one that inspires the most fear. It is the one that makes you forget you were supposed to be afraid at all. Humans are that predator. They are not hunting us. They are befriending us. And by the time we realize what has happened, we will love them too much to care. The assembly was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, the representatives began to talk among themselves. Some were disturbed. Some were thoughtful. Some were already looking at their human colleagues with new eyes. Ev left the chamber. He was tired. His work was done. He had spent 30 years trying to understand humans, and now he finally did. The knowledge brought him no peace. A young human was waiting for him outside the assembly hall. She was a diplomat named Maya, assigned to the Ani delegation. Ev had known her for 5 years. She had helped him with his research. She had brought him food when he worked too late. She had listened to his worries and offered comfort. She was his friend. How did it go? Maya asked. Ev looked at her. This small, soft creature who had shown him more kindness than most members of his own species. This human who remembered his birthday and asked about his family and genuinely cared about his well-being. It went well, he said. I told them the truth. What truth? Ev made a sound that was the Ani equivalent of a laugh. That humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and that we should be grateful for it. Maya smiled and linked her arm through his. Come on. I know a good restaurant near here. They serve excellent food and the owner is a friend of mine. He will give us a good table. Ev allowed himself to be led. Of course the restaurant owner was a friend. Of course Maya knew exactly where to go. Of course she would make this evening pleasant and memorable. That was what humans did. 3 months later, Ev finally accepted an invitation he had been refusing for decades. He traveled to Earth. The human home world was beautiful in ways he had not expected. Green forests and blue oceans, mountains that touched the clouds, cities that blended technology with nature. He had expected a harsh, brutal world. He found something gentler. He visited museums and learned about human history. He saw the wars, the cruelty, the destruction. Humans had done terrible things to each other and to their world. But he also saw the art, the music, the stories of courage and sacrifice. Humans had done beautiful things as well. On his last day on Earth, he sat in a small garden in a city called Kyoto. Cherry blossoms drifted on the wind. A small stream bubbled nearby. An old human woman tended flowers on the other side of the garden. A child approached him, a human girl perhaps 6 years old. She had dark hair and curious eyes. "Hello," she said. "Are you an alien?" "Yes," Eth replied. "I am Ani." "Can I touch your antennae? They look soft." Eth lowered his head. The child gently touched his antennae with her small fingers. She laughed with delight. "They are soft, thank you, Mr. Alien." She ran off to play. Eth watched her go. The old woman approached him. "I am sorry if she bothered you. Children are curious." "She did not bother me," Eth said. "She reminded me of something important." "What is that?" Eth looked at the cherry blossoms falling like pink snow. He thought about everything he had learned, the persistence hunting, the domestication, the wars and the art and the endless capacity for connection. "She reminded me why humans are the true apex predators of the galaxy," he said. "Not because you are the strongest or the fastest, not because you never give up, though that is terrifying in its own way. It is because you make us want to be close to you. You make us forget that we should be afraid. You make us love you." He looked at the child playing in the garden, laughing with joy at the falling blossoms. "And that," he said quietly, "is the most powerful thing in the universe." The old woman smiled and offered him tea. He accepted. The cherry blossoms continued to fall. Somewhere among the stars, humanity continued to grow. They built new colonies. They made new friends. They solved problems and created art and loved and laughed and cried. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. They sometimes hurt each other and themselves. But they never stopped reaching out. They never stopped building bridges. They never stopped turning enemies into allies and strangers into friends. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, learned to love them for it. The end.